Hello, lovelies. I'm glad you're back. In today's video, I want to talk about a question I get often, and it is, do you need to have a blog? I know I touched on this in another video, but I really want to talk about whether you need to have a blog, and if you do have a blog, how to do it right. So that is what we are going to dive into today. For those of you who really enjoy writing and you feel compelled to blog in order to promote your book and connect with your audience and readers, a blog can be a really great way to do that. But the answer is no, you don't need to have a blog. You truly do not. It is kind of a bit of a myth in the writing world. You really don't need a blog to promote what you're doing. It's just one of those things that some writers are more compelled to do because they're writers. They like to write. If you don't consider yourself a writer, other than the fact that you just put together this magnificent book, that's totally okay. You do not need to chain yourself to the desk and torture yourself with some weekly blog commitment, okay? If you do want to blog, the rest of this video is for you. You can stay tuned to hear more. If you don't want to blog, I am giving you permission not to. But if you do, you have to do it right, or it's just as bad as not doing it at all. And it's even worse because you're really wasting your time and effort that you could be putting elsewhere into other avenues that help you promote your book and connect with your readers in the ways that might work better for them and better for you. So if you do want to blog, let's talk about this. Here's a few rules for good blogging. But first, let's define really what should be happening on a blog. The purpose of a blog is to provide written content that is, I'm going to call it carefully curated towards your specific audience, and that audience should directly overlap with your readership. Now, you may have a couple different angles that your book is taking, or a couple different angles that your blog could go in that don't 100% overlap with each other, the book and the blog, but there should be a lot of overlap. I don't want to see this little Venn diagram with the circles barely touching, okay? I want to see them like almost eclipsing each other. There should be tons of overlap. So your purpose on a blog is to provide value to your readers, content, valuable content that helps them understand a couple things. Number one, who you are. They get to understand, hear your voice, understand your style, and, get to know your personality a little bit. So this is not some stiff academic thing, unless your book is very academic and you're writing to an academic crowd, obviously. But it doesn't have to feel like you are writing a term paper for your senior year, physics class. Okay, clearly I don't know what happens in physics class. I do, but I don't care. You get my point, right? You're not writing some stiff term paper to impress a professor somewhere, okay? You are trying to connect with your readers, and what connects with your readers? Human things, being a human, just being authentic. I say dumb things all the time, and you guys like me, right? I haven't scared you off if you're still watching this. So just be yourself and connect with them because they need to understand who you are. Number two, they are looking for certain information, just like they're going to come to your book. They're going to sort of have an interest that they want to fulfill, a question or a problem or something that they are looking for. They are looking for entertainment or just an interesting read, or they have this kind of burning question and your blog is going to fill that for them. It's the same with your book. So keep that in mind. What purpose are you serving for your readers? And number three, the purpose of your blog is really to show them what kind of stuff, what kind of feel or connection that they could get within your book as well. Now, you may be writing your memoir that feels very narrative and story based, and maybe your book is going to be taking a little bit of a different toll. So it's a different path. So it's not like you're writing stories on your blog, maybe, right? We'll talk about that in a minute. That's okay. They don't have to be similar in nature, but it's like similar content or similar topic. Again, we'll talk about this, but it's like telling your blog is like a message to your readers. Like, hey, I wrote this amazing book and I'm going to keep giving you more stuff. This is maybe going to go in a different direction, or it's going to be supportive information or extra information, stuff that didn't go in my book, or writing about my book or whatever, right? Like all the things. It can be much broader than just your book. So that is kind of the purpose of a blog. And if that sounds like the best way for you to serve your readers, and those are the things that you're willing to commit to, then let's talk about how to do a blog right. The number one rule with blogging, no matter what it is about or who you're writing to, is to be consistent. You don't have to do a post a day or a post a week. You don't have to do every Friday, every Monday, every Tuesday. It doesn't necessarily matter what number or what day you fill in there, but you must be consistent and tell your readers, here is what I'm going to give you monthly or weekly. Here is what I'm going to give you twice a month. Here's what I'm going to give you every other Thursday. It doesn't matter what that is, but be consistent and tell them what to expect. That consistency will build trust, and then they will be looking forward to hearing more from you via your book. Okay? So again, we talked a little bit about content, but another rule of blogging is that it should feel like it's related to your book. Let me back up. If your purpose in blogging is to connect with readers that are in the same market audience as your book, then your blog should be connected somehow to the topic of your book. It doesn't have to be about your book, like, hey guys, my book is coming out, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that can be part of it, but it doesn't need to be about your book. It can, be somehow related though, right? It needs to be somehow related if that is your purpose. And it really should serve a bigger purpose than your book does. A blog needs to be a bit bigger than your book, like education, support, getting your voice heard. Those are great purposes for your blog that help to connect with your readers. Your book may have a lot of that in it, or all of those elements, but it's going to be more contained to your story. This is where you get to break out of that story construct and go a little bit bigger and have more of a connection in that purpose area, okay? And another rule of blogging, it cannot simply be excerpts of your book. Your book really should not be crafted from a blog, and your blog should not be crafted from your book. Does that make sense? Like, you're not just taking chapter 1 and breaking it up into 4 blog posts and then posting that 4 weeks in a row, right? We'll talk about this separately. You can share excerpts, but the problem with excerpts in a more regular way or a traditional sense is that there are usually contextual problems. For example, if you're excerpting, is that the word? Excerpting from, let's say, chapter 4. And chapters 1 through 3 gave us the backstory we needed to understand what chapter 4 is all about. Are we going to be confused without that backstory? So we're going to talk about excerpts separately. Like I said, don't fret, because that can be a really valuable thing to share with your readers. But you don't simply want to just take parts of your book and clunk them into your blogs on some regular basis as if that is the purpose of your blog. That doesn't work. Readers are not interested in that. And then eventually what you'll do is end up giving your book away for free. Okay, so again, I don't want to repeat myself. We're going to talk about excerpts. They should be done mindfully. There should be a purpose behind them, a very specific and different purpose than your blog. But do not simply just clunk in chunks of your book onto your blog, okay? Think about it differently. Blog posts should be more of a specific format and length. And if you are not familiar with content writing or copywriting, go ahead and do some research on that a little bit. I would send you to like copyblogger.com. They are excellent. They have so much information on how to craft a blog post in an effective way, including like what headings you should, how to write good effective headings that get people's attention. But In general, blog posts are usually more digestible by your readers if they're shorter. There are some very effective long form blog posts, and I tend to write a little bit more long form than short. But short is totally fine. You don't need to stress out about hitting some 4,000 word length. 1,000 or under is usually something your readers will be more familiar with as far as format goes. It's not going to take them very long, or they're not going to be committing too much if it's shorter, and they like that. For someone who subscribes to multiple newsletters and maybe gets like 10, 15 blog posts in their inbox a week, they're not going to want to spend more than 5 or 10 minutes on each one, maybe less. So don't make it feel laborious for your audience to get through a blog post. Don't include large chunks of text. Shorter lines, shorter sentences, shorter paragraphs are usually much more effective. Think of the white space on the page, and you don't want something like that spans your entire screen length. That can be super hard to read. And if it's very thick, your eyes just get lost after a while. So shorter lines, less complex language. I mean, if you're coming from a very academic or very specific area where there's some maybe jargon or industry specific terminology that you want to use it, but make sure you're clarifying with your readers in each post with each time you drop it, like what that means. Give them some context or a definition if necessary. But don't try to sound fancy in your blog posts. Blog posts are more almost informal in some ways. You're just sort of like connecting with your peeps, okay? Connecting with your people, with your readers as a person, not as some big conglomerate, fancy group of smarty people, okay? I don't have a good comparison there, but you know what I mean. You're not coming at it from this like university perspective. Like if you're writing on behalf of a university, you want to sound in a particular way. You're coming at it from a one person, very individual, very personal level, especially since you're trying to get them interested in your book, which is a very personal book, right? So think shorter, simpler, more direct language, and you don't have to sweat about making it this long, eloquent thing. So what should you blog about? We talked a little bit about this, but here are a few things that I want you to think about as far as what you can map out for your blog post topics. So anything really related to your book is fair game. Support words of wisdom, little quips on things you learned during your journey. If you are, let's say you're writing about kind of surviving divorce, right? You might give your readers some information on what you found helpful when working with your divorce attorney, or insight into going through a child custody battle, right? You might share parts of your story within those posts, but they're going to offer a little bit more, some support in how to choose a good divorce attorney, or words of wisdom that you picked up from your mediator or whatever. Maybe you had a mentor. There was a friend of the family or an aunt or someone who had gone through a divorce that really mentored you. And you can say like, hey, my Aunt Sally really was there for me, and this is how you can turn around and offer support to other people or whatever. Think of, the topic of your book, and maybe there's a couple related topics. For example, in that divorce book, maybe you also talk about dating after divorce, or you talk about raising kids as a single mom, or you talk about protecting yourself emotionally and getting emotional help, via therapy or whatever it is during that process. You could talk about all sorts of things on your blog, and you can even have different ways to organize those topics on your blog. Maybe there's particular topics that categories that you tag your blog posts with, and maybe you've outlined 5, 6, 7, 8 of them that you want to have like buckets, big categories that belong on your blog. So one might be divorce, support people, right? Like attorneys and mediators and all that. Then one might be dating, and one might be single parenting, and one might be self-care, right? Taking care of yourself and getting the help you need, right? Maybe those are your categories, and then you can list out blog posts that belong, titles, just, like talking about those specific things under each bucket. You can also on your blog talk about, just it could be a space where your voice is heard in the larger world of books. So you might talk about your writing process, and you might talk about how that helped you heal, or how, what insights you got from it, or what connections you were able to make, or whatever. But you could also give book recommendations on other books, other helpful books that maybe you read along the way. You can give reviews on those books. You can point your readers in different directions, supporting other authors that are writing similar things. You could even interview maybe authors or professionals in the divorce field, right? A mediator on a particular topic, and give that as a blog post or even a video post. Think a little broader here. How does your book live in that world of bigger books? And how can you talk about that world? Because your readers aren't just coming to you for answers, right? You have to know that, and you have to be okay with that. You are not a one-stop shop, and that is fine. That's not your job. You want to be able to provide them support and help and insight and love from a particular perspective. You get to choose that perspective. You get to make it as narrow or as broad as you want to. I choose somewhere in the middle. That's the most, I think that's the wisest position to take. Not super narrow, but not super broad. And then let them see where they can get additional information, additional help. You can also provide like how to help, right? How to select a divorce attorney, maybe a checklist. Maybe there are specific questions that you want your readers to know they should ask each attorney when going through the interview process. Maybe there are particular steps they need to take to file a post-decree motion or whatever. Like whatever you feel was helpful in your journey, and whatever you feel qualified to talk about. Obviously, I got into some like lawyerly stuff there. Maybe you don't feel qualified, but that, just get thinking. Like, what is it? Maybe a checklist or a how to step-by-step thing that could relate to your particular topic. And then you can also talk about current events related to your book. Think about that travel memoir that you might be writing that took place in Germany. Maybe you are sharing some current events on some things that happened in that area, or some things that happened since you traveled there. And that's a really interesting connection to your book. And you can tie it in. When I was there, I saw XYZ, and now this is happening, right? So what current events or what big monumental things, maybe there's like some court case that your divorce book can connect with, right? That it would have maybe impacted your book or whatever. So think about maybe if there's some current events going on that you can talk about, or some trends, or some, new insights that are coming to this world that your book lives in. And you can also formulate your blog to be more of a personal blog. Like, think of maybe the earlier days that blogs lived in. This is what I did today, and this is where I'm at with this particular journey. Maybe your blog is almost a continuation of your book, and you're giving us updates or whatever as you go. I don't know what might work there, but you can definitely get more personal, and it can definitely be more like, come learn about this world of Danielle and see me journey through this process. There might be something so interesting that you're going through personally that people continually ask you about, like maybe you are on another world trip or whatever, and you want to have this personal connection with people as you go. This could be a great way to do it. So those are some ideas to get your wheels started on how to do an effective blog, how to create an effective blog with the right purpose behind it, and then what your blog should be about, and how to communicate from that perspective of trying to engage with your readers, but giving them a little bit more than where your book might be able to be focused on. Because your book is about you, and this blog may be a way for you to step back and say, like, now I shared my story, or I will share my story if you're still unpublished, but I want to give you more. I want to be able to give you more on this topic. So That is it for today's video. Let me know what you think about it. Are you going to do a blog? Let me hear about it. I want you to share, of course, share your blog with me and the group. Tell us what you'll be doing. I want to hear your plan. And we'll continue talking about this whole book promotional thing in the next video.